Hello. Welcome, friends. My name is Lynn, and today I have a flip of the December 2025 Spellbinders Club Kits. So, as per usual, for my flip cards, I'll be making at least one flat, one layered, one interactive, and one pop-up card. Here's a quick look at the 4 cards that I'll be making in this video, and because these videos do tend to be on the long side, if there is one card in particular you want to see me make, you can hover over the timeline and skip straight to just that video. Today I'm going to be featuring the Better Press of the Month Club, Glimmer of the Month, 3D Embossing Folder of the Month, the Small Die and the Large Dies of the Month, and as well the Clear Stamp of the Month. And I just really love how all of these cards came out. I'm super excited that I think I might have discovered a new technique. Let's make these. Okay, so we're going to start with my flat card, and I always have a very natural inclination to reach for the Better Press Club when I'm thinking of flat card, because so often we get pretty much everything that we need to put together a really lovely card that doesn't really need too much more. And this month is no exception, because we're getting this really a pretty large size heart, and I do love that it is, I don't know, it's one of those hearts that feels like it might be asymmetric. I don't know if it actually is or if it just looks that way because the heart is defined by a lot of asymmetric kind of hand-drawn hearts and crosses and circles and little sparkle stars. So it's just a really fun, it feels kind of artsy, and that's what I'm gonna go with for how I'm gonna use it today. So instead of just pressing it one time into, and I am using 100% cotton card because I just love how it looks and feels, I am actually going to press it 3 times into this card, and each time is going to be mostly one color ink, but I want to sort of ombre it into the next color. So I'm going from pink to purple to teal. Those aren't the exact names of these colors, but they are from the relatively new set of Better Press inks that I think were designed by Dina Wakely and available at Spellbinders. And I've just pressed this 3 times into my panel here. Now, with my flat cards, really the only goal of it is to create cards that are easy mailers. And that's why I'm limiting myself to just one additional layer of cardstock on top of the card base itself. Now, because I have put that restriction, I want to create a border for the panel that I just better pressed, but I can't add another layer of cardstock. So all I'm doing is inking directly onto the card base with the very same Better Press ink colors that I just used. And this is a really nice way, even if you were going to do like a solid color all the way around, it's a nice way to save yourself a layer of cardstock. Keeps your card nice and thin and nice and light so that it goes through the mail easy peasy just for the cost of a single stamp. But since I was doing it anyways and I have this ombre going on my card, I created a little bit of an ombre border as well. And that's a fun look that you can't really replicate with solid color cardstock unless your cardstock came like that. So if you're gonna try this technique, I would definitely, maybe try different interesting patterns for your borders or different interesting ombres. So love how that turned out, and the last thing that I need to do is add a sentiment, because of course I always think about the sentiment at the very end. I think if I had planned a little bit better, it might have made more sense to try to better press or even stamp a sentiment onto the panel and then do my better pressing of the heart design around it so that it's all just one layer. But I didn't, and I don't have enough room to add a sentiment where there's a little bit of a gap, just not quite big enough of a gap to stamp into. Plus, I already splattered some ink to go for that kind of artsy look and feel. So all I did was pull out the clear stamp of the month, which this month is all sentiments and does come with coordinating dies. So that is my flat card. Okay, next up is my layered card. All right, my video today, my flip video today is coming a little bit late because I took a little bit of a detour and experimented with a technique that I don't know if I'm the first to do, because there's tons of brilliant people out there. So I'm sure somebody has thought to do this already. But I actually created some, I guess I'm going to call it foiled washi tape. And I'm really excited about it. I will have a separate video showing how I made this, but essentially what I've done and what you can see on my desk right now is a panel that I have hot foiled with the Glimmer of the Month. And at the moment, I'm just using the remnant, the leftovers from my foil, to again add a border that's going to match 100% with the foiled panel. All I've done is stick double-sided adhesive tape on all four edges, and I'm burnishing that foil right into the adhesive. And going back to my panel though, as you can see, there's a gap. There's a strip there that's white. And when I was thinking about this flip video and kind of mulling around ideas in my head, because that's kind of how I approach these videos. I look at the club kits, and before I even craft with it, I'm just kind of sitting with it in my head for a week or so just to brainstorm. And sometimes I'll do this even like while I'm watching TV. I'll just think about what are some ideas I could try with the club kits. And the idea came to me, could I mask off a section of a glittered hot foiled panel and then still use what was masked off, so that maybe I could layer it back on, or, you know, get the most out of our foil basically. And at the moment I'm doing that same trick, but I've just used a thinner tape to add some borders to my foiled panel. And what I came up with is I thought about using actual washi. I thought about using Scotch removable tape because it's low tack, but I don't know if those things are heat resistant. And that led me to this. This is a heat resistant tape. It's clear and it's low tack enough that you can actually peel it off, but it doesn't work on cardstock because when you heat this up, because it does get foiled over, and so you're going to glimmer over this just like you would glimmer the whole panel. And I think the heat actually activates the adhesive a little bit. And when I tried this on regular cardstock, it did lift my cardstock. Even though before heating it up, I was able to remove it from plain cardstock just fine. So this technique relies on two things. It relies on this specialty clear heat resistant tape, usually used for sublimation. And it relies also on using the Spellbinders specialty glimmer paper, because that paper is actually, it's actually a little bit synthetic. And so it doesn't have the same like fibrous paper fibers that a normal cardstock has. Part of it, and part of why it glimmers so consistently and so perfectly, is because it is super ultra smooth, and in large part that's because it's a man-made quote paper. So that property works in our favor with this technique, because even after the clear heat resistant tape has been glimmered onto, you can still peel it off and it doesn't tear your cardstock underneath at all. So I'm super excited to just play with this more. Again, I'll have a separate tutorial video on exactly how to do it, but today how I've used it is I put this clear essentially foiled washi tape over some glitter cardstock. Glitter cardstock doesn't always, and I would say most of the time, it doesn't really foil because you can feel a lot of times the glitter. And in the case of a glitter cardstock that's actually like encapsulated and you can't feel it, those do tend to hot foil pretty well. But not all glitter cardstock is like that. So you can actually add a touch of foil onto different substrates that normally you would not be able to foil over. And I think the application of this can be, I don't know, the sky's the limit. I've only just sort of, quote, discovered this for myself. I don't know if I'm the first to discover it, but I only just discovered it for the first time just in noodling about this project in my head. And so I'm really excited to play with different applications and different ways to use it. Some of the things I was thinking was you could even maybe add some hot foiled washi to pattern papers, also maybe to thinner papers that wouldn't foil very well, handmade papers, etc. I think the possibilities are just limitless, and I can't wait to kind of explore more. And if you're going to try it out, definitely tag me and show me how you're using this technique. I'm going to link to that clear heat resistant tape, but if you just search for those terms, I just got it on Amazon, and in fact I'm going to go and search for wider tapes because I've got 3/4 inch tape and I'm kind of curious if I can find wider tapes. Okay, meanwhile, I've already started my interactive card, which, oh my gosh, the large die of the month is just so darling. I really love all of the kind of spa day and just these really fun, kind of cute images. So like the Cozy Toes releases and collections are really awesome, and this sort of reminds me of that. It's just very comforting, very low key and relaxing. So I'm assembling this gal. You've got some different options for her eyes. You can just put some eyelashes on her. There's there's some cucumbers you can die cut and put on her eyes. And this right here, this little eye mask, sleeping mask, it's from the free little bonus that you get if you are a deluxe Caboodle subscriber, because if you get all of the club kits, you always get a little something extra with your kits, and there's always something that it coordinates to, and that changes each month. So this month you get these cute little like a sleeping eye mask with some slippers, and it coordinates really beautifully with the large die of the month. Now, as you saw in my earlier preview, my interactive card today is going to be a double slider. It's been a while since I've made one of these, and so if you've never seen how to make a double slider before, you don't need any specialty dies, and you can do it, essentially, you can make it to fit any size card and any image that you want to slide. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate about maybe just knowing the mechanics of how to put together different interactive mechanisms, because then you can really adapt it to what you're making, where having a die, it will be very precise and will cut the exact shape out every time, but it can be limiting. So the idea I had as I was noodling about what to do for today's flip video, I had the idea when I saw this die set that this gal, she's going to be in bed. Now, why she's got her hair wrapped in a towel, which would suggest that maybe it's wet still. So why she's got wet hair and is already in bed is a mystery, but just go with me here. So she's gonna be in bed and under the covers, all nice and cozy. And when you pull on the pull tab, she's gonna pop up outside of the covers. I just thought the whole idea of this would be super super cute, and especially when I saw that the eye mask was part of the little gift for Deluxe Caboodle Club Kits subscribers. I knew I had to do that because it's like she's sleeping and we've kind of pulled her awake. Okay, so I've assembled my gal here. I did use some pattern papers for her. These pattern papers are from the Not Too Shabby shop. Specifically they're from the box of the month. Now, here's where we're gonna make our mechanism to fit. So she's large. She's a pretty good size. She would take up most of an A2 card, which is why I have to do a 5x7 because I need enough room for the mechanism. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one piece that's going to be our conveyor belt essentially. And I cut this a little bit too tall, so I'm going to cut it down a little bit because to this I'm going to add rails on the left and the right. And those rails are just 1/4 inch strips that are taller than that panel, the conveyor belt that I cut initially. Now, when you're looking at this and you're making this to custom fit whatever it is you want to move around on your card, here are the key factors you want to take into consideration. That middle section between those two rails that I created, that needs to be wide enough for your object, whatever it is you want to move. In this case, the gal that we have here, because she's going to slide up and down this conveyor belt. So that needs to be wide enough to have her sit entirely in between those two guardrails. Now, those two guardrails left and right, it doesn't really matter how wide they are. I just do 1/4 inch because that's what I'm used to. But they do need to be taller. They do need to extend above and below that conveyor belt because those guardrails will keep the conveyor belt basically looped into that middle section so that it doesn't slide off and start to get wonky. So that's the mechanism. That's how you create the base of our mechanism. Now, for this to be a conveyor belt, we actually need a belt. So I'll get to that in a moment. But what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of low profile foam to those guardrails on the top and on the bottom, because on the top of the belt, that's where our gal will get adhered to the belt that's going to be rotating around this mechanism here. On the bottom, I want to add some low profile foam as well because there's going to be another layer of cardstock on the bottom, and that's going to be our pull tab. So a double slider is the mechanism of choice when you want to have two things happen but in opposite directions. So as I pull down on the pull tab, I want something to go up. And in this case, the pull tab's going to go down and the gal here is going to go up. And so that's going to be just like a really fun way to kind of get some movement. And a double slider is going to be the perfect thing for having those opposing or opposite moving objects. Now, for the belt itself, the conveyor belt itself, I'm cutting down, this is just a baggie. What I feel works best is, those Ziploc baggies that, I don't know if soft is the right word for it, but they're a little bit more sort of malleable. Like when you crumple it, like you crush it in your hands, it doesn't crinkle and make a lot of noise. It's that's what I mean by softer. It just will, it's more malleable, so it's going to loop around that mechanism that we created much more easily, I feel, than a something like a cello bag, which I think is really crinkly and a little bit more stiff. And so what I want to do is just cut this down to size. So this is going to be basically the width that we've left in between those guardrails. And when I'm going to attach this, I actually want to not loop this onto this belt too tightly, because what will happen is the pull tab will be attached to one side of this, and it's going to pull that plastic, which is looped around this cardstock. And so you don't want it to be super snug or super tight, because then it's not going to move quite as easily as if you were to leave maybe if it helps, you can maybe add a couple of layers of cardstock under your plastic just as a spacer, but I just eyeball leaving, a smidge. I don't know how you measure that, but I just like to leave a little bit of wiggle room in that plastic as I seal it on the other end with some double-sided adhesive tape. So now that we have our mechanism complete, we've got our gal here. I'm going to cut a pull tab. And again, the pull tab limitations are that just like the gal here, it has to fit on the conveyor belt, because the things that are moving, the gal and the pull tab, they have to sit on that conveyor belt that we just made. And so I'm just going to cut. Now, I would definitely recommend, as with pretty much all mechanisms, interactive mechanisms, use some heavyweight cardstock, because especially with the pull tab, it's got to pull that plastic so that it rotates around the conveyor belt. And if it's not a heavyweight cardstock, it's gonna feel kind of floppy, and it might be actually harder to pull that plastic around that conveyor belt mechanism. So definitely, I recommend something like 120 pound cover weight. Now, I'm also going to punch some thumb notches. I like to punch my thumb notch through the top layer, so that's the blanket in this case, and through the card base. And that way, when you grab the pull tab, you can grab it from the top and the bottom. There's it's only where that pull tab is, it's only going to be the pull tab that you can grab. It makes it just like a little bit easier to operate. I do also want to dry fit everything, really make sure that everything looks the way that I want. When I go to place my mechanism, I do want to make sure that it's not going to be visible through that thumb notch. You're not going to really see it from the front. You may see it from the back. So it's best to kind of make sure that you're clear of that on the front and back. And to glue down the mechanism, you're only going to put adhesive on those left and right guardrails. That's it. Because remember, everything in the middle has to move. So it can't be adhered down to anything except for the belt. Now, to adhere these to the conveyor belt, both the pull tab and our gal here, you just need one line of double-sided adhesive. For the gal, it's going to be at the bottom of her, and that's the line of adhesive I'm adding now. And for the pull tab, it's at the top of the pull tab. And so once I have these attached, now I can kind of do a little bit of a dry fit, and I want more of her to be visible when she's fully pulled out of the blankets. So I'm gonna actually shorten my blanket a little bit so that you can appreciate more of her, because before, like, basically only her head was showing, and she's got some really fun little robe that she's wearing, and I kind of want that to be visible. So I just cut a little bit off of her blanket at the bottom and punched a new thumb notch, and that should be fine. The main thing that you're looking for on that top layer, or the blanket in this case, is that you want to make sure that your guardrails are covered. And I should also say the other consideration when you're creating your mechanism is you also need a little bit of room outside of your mechanism to adhere down whatever this top layer is that's going to hide everything. So I just added some double thick foam, because remember we had 2 layers of low profile foam plus multiple layers of cardstock, and so double thick foam was just enough to adhere the blanket to the card base. And this little flap here, I was thinking would be kind of your bed sheet, that's folded over over your comforter. And I don't want it to continue to flap up, but I do want to leave some dimension. So what I've done is just added a strip of low profile foam underneath it, and then that way it is actually going to still have a little bit of dimension and interest, but it won't constantly want to sort of open and flap upwards, and ultimately I don't want it to cover our gal when she pops up. And of course, I didn't think about the sentiment until now. So as I mentioned, when I'm brainstorming and planning for these flip videos, I really just have a concept that I want to go for, and then I just go for it. Had I thought about this card and how the final card would look a little bit, because really the concept I had to roll with was, oh, what if she pops out of these covers and I make a little double slider. That was basically as far as I had thought. And if I had thought about it a little bit more, I would have actually stamped this sentiment, or any sentiment really, onto that white band that I left at the top there, because then it would be more seamless, and I think it might ultimately look a little bit better. But again, to the rescue, a clear stamp of the month. So I just stamped and used the coordinating die to cut that out. Now, because the pull tab is so large, I thought this is a cool way to give somebody a gift card. And I just love the sentiment, because it says, because you deserve more me time, and then you pull, you get a gift card. And so this might be a fun gift card to maybe get a massage, or go to a spa, or just something to give your loved one that is their hobby, for example, or their favorite store to shop at, whatever it is that you feel would be a nice little treat for them to just enjoy on their own, or away from whatever is stressing them out. So I love the sentiment, and I love that this pull tab is large. Now, because it's large enough for a gift card, alternatively, you could put a hidden message in there as well. So if you wanted, you could either write a little note, or you could stamp another sentiment onto that pull tab so that it gets revealed only when they pull on it. So there's lots of little things that you could do as a nice little surprise with a pull tab that is large like this one. So that's our final card. I just love how this turned out. And even though the gift card was kind of a last minute idea, because I used that low profile foam on those guardrails, top and bottom, there's actually enough space for the extra thickness of the gift card, and it's not overly there's not too much friction, it's not overly tight, and everything still operates really smoothly. Okay, Now onto our final card. This is a pop-up card. It's gonna start actually as just your standard gatefold card. So I'm going back to A2 now for my card size. So this is 5.5 by 8.5, and all I did was along that 8.5-inch edge, I scored at 2 1/8 on one side, rotated 180 degrees, and scored at 2 1/8 on the opposite side. And for my pop-up cards, I do try to think a little bit about the front of the card, but really, for me, a pop-up card, the fun is on the inside of the card. And that's really the thing that sort of I tend to think about first as I am designing these. But when I'm actually putting it together, I do like to start on the front of the card at least a little bit, because while everything is flat and you don't have a lot of bulk or unevenness on the inside of the card, you can still burnish everything nice and smoothly. So I'm going to use the 3D embossing folder to emboss basically a full A2 panel. And I have found if you have the Big Shot, I think the Spellbinders 3D embossing folders are not quite as thick or dimensional as the Sizzix embossing folders. So what I've found is that you need to use the plate combination that is suggested by Sizzix for a 3D embossing folder, and then I need to add a shim. And I have found that the shim that kind of gives me perfect pressure is the Glimmer plate that's thin and sort of minty green. I add that to my sandwich combination whenever I am using a 3D embossing folder from Spellbinders, and it seems to work beautifully. You can see all of this really lovely dimension here. And it is, oh, I lied earlier. I actually cut this to slightly wider than A2, because sometimes when you 3D emboss, because it has the effect of raising some of your cardstock. Well, that cardstock has to come from somewhere. It's going from flat to raised. And so often when you emboss a panel, it will kind of change in size a smidge. So if you want things to be super exact, then you might want to cut a panel slightly larger than what you need and then trim it down to what you need. So, and what I have found is that usually left to right is the dimension where it shrinks. Now, this pop-up mechanism, I'm winging it. And ultimately, it came to scoring at 1 inch, 1 3/4, 3 3/4, and then cutting at 4 1/2. So again, you've got a 1 inch glue tab. Then your pop-up mechanism basically pops up from the back 3/4 of an inch. That's what that dimension represents. And then I have given myself 2 inches to have a platform to glue my focal image onto. So that takes us to 3 3/4. And then you need another glue tab that is 3/4 tall. And when it's glued down, it looks a little something like that. And so this is sort of like a double pop-up. So again, I'm going to start with the 3/4 inch glue tab. I'm going to glue that to the gate, butting up the end of it right up to the score line, but not crossing over. I'm going to fold this on the second score line, and only going to put adhesive on the 1 inch glue tab at the opposite end, and then folding my card down closed and burnishing everything. That should adhere exactly where it needs to in order to fold down flat. But then when you open this, it pops up and you get this little box essentially that we can now decorate. I first saw this card on a live stream that Jamie at the Not Too Shabby Shop had, and I loved it. I didn't really pay too close attention to her dimensions. So I was just winging it. So if you happen to watch that live stream, Jamie probably has different dimensions for you. Now, I again was just winging it with these panels as well, but basically, if you want to maximize this what gets seen in here, the size of these panels, the width of this is basically A2, so 4.25 minus that 3/4 of an inch. But because we want it to sit very, very comfortably inside, I shaved off an extra 1/8 of an inch. So ultimately this came to 3 3/8 of an inch wide. And again, how I arrived at that, because this was just on the fly making it, is everything has to fit inside of the A2 card. And so the width that you have to work with is 4.25. Now, this gets attached to that mechanism that we glued onto the gate, and that was 3/4 of an inch wide. So you take your full A2 width, you subtract 3/4 of an inch, and that's how I arrived at 3.5. But I just shaved off 1/8 of an inch just to make sure that it comfortably sits inside there, and that's it. Now with the height, that one's easy peasy. I just wanted it to take up the full height. So you can see when it's open, this is basically the entire 5.5 inch height of an A2 card. And so the height of both of those panels is 2 3/4, which is just half of 5.5. So that's how you arrive at this. And the reason why I like to explain like how to figure this out is because if you want to adapt this to a different size card, then you can do that. And as well, if you have other ideas for what you want to put inside of this double pop-up, then at least you know what the boundaries are for the mechanism. So now to finish my card on the outside, I like to keep my pop-up cards pretty simple on the outside because, as I mentioned, I feel like a lot of the fun of a pop-up is what's going on inside. And the more something looks kind of plain and simple on the outside, I think the more of a shock or surprise it is when they open the card. So I'm going to keep this really simple by making a belly band using the exact same color cardstock as the panel that I 3D embossed. And I like to make my belly band just loosely folded over the finished card. I leave it to the end because if it's super bulky, then you're wrapping it to fit. So you know that it's going to fit, because this card with everything on the inside, it's got a little bit of bulk to it. And so I don't trust that if I just scored something that it would ultimately end up being right. Plus, I don't need a harsh, fold. I just need this to be, wrapped around. And so that's how I like to approach making my belly bands. And I always close them in the front and just cover that gap with usually ephemera, but today I'm using die cuts. So the hearts are die cut from the small die of the month, as are these two adorable otters, which there's a die that cuts out their belly and it kind of looks like a onesie to me, because you get a sentiment plate that die cuts words into it too. And when you just look at, you can see the die that's on my storage panel here. It really looks like a onesie. So I thought it would be fun to cut it out of pattern paper as if these little otters are wearing little onesies. So that's my pop-up card, and here's a final look at all 4 cards that I made today. This is my flat card, which features the Better Press of the month. I just did a fun sort of artsy ombre multiple letter press onto this panel. And next up is my layered card, which I'm really excited for. I don't know that I discovered this technique, but I discovered it for myself for the first time, creating foiled washi, which I masked off from my full panel, and then I took the foiled washi and I applied it to some glitter cardstock, creating some foiled glitter, which I absolutely love, and I can't wait to try that technique out with in other applications. This is my interactive card, which is a double slider. So you pull on the bottom and she pops up out of the covers, and the pull tab serves as a little bit of a gift card holder as well. So super fun. Love how this one turned out, and I like the idea of putting a little gift card in here as well as another added little surprise. But like I mentioned before, you could also like stamp another image there, put another sentiment there. This is just a fun one to play with. You can see I just really enjoy playing with it. And I do like that it looks weird before you pull it. So I think it actually maybe encourages some curiosity, and then they'll look for that arrow to pull. Okay, so here's my pop-up card, which looks like your run-of-the-mill gatefold card. Very lovely. I love all the texture of the 3D embossing folder. And then you open it up and you get these fun little otters. I love the sentiments. So this sentiment on the outside is, "You're the one I want to annoy forever." That's a better press sentiment. And on the inside it says, "You're stuck with me." And that's from the clear stamp of the month. Super, super excited. So that's my flip for this month's Spellbinders Club Kits. Here's a sneaky peek at how I created the, what I'm calling foiled washi. So as I mentioned, there'll be a separate video for this, but I just want to show you this short little clip as a little bit of a teaser for what's to come. I did a lot of experimentation and it works very consistently, very reliably, and it's a lot of fun to do. Now, at the moment, I'm also searching to see if I can get wider tape than this, because this is only 3/4 of an inch tall. So stay tuned. If I find it, I'll leave links to that in the description box below, along with everything else that I used today. Thanks so much for checking out my video, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.